In a forgotten corner of the galaxy, where suns barely lit the sky and the stars themselves seemed afraid to shine, there existed a prison known only in whispers, Vault X9. It was not a place for common criminals or petty thieves. This was where the Zarathian Empire locked away nightmares, the kind of creatures that no other world dared to keep alive. Built into the jagged rocks of a barren moon, surrounded by magnetic storms and guarded by warships, Vault X9 was considered escape-proof, death-proof, and mercy-proof. It was the final stop for monsters. The Zarathians, cold-blooded aliens with 6 eyes and silver-blue scales, ruled half the known systems with an iron grip. They believed in strength, in fear, and in control. They also believed humans were a weak and messy species, unruly, loud, soft, easy to break. So when they caught a lone human drifting near one of their restricted zones, they didn't ask questions. He had no ID, no ship registry, no explanation, just a name, Ryder Voss. No resistance, no begging, not a word. His silence disturbed them, more than insults would have. He stood tall, even as chains made of neutron steel wrapped around his arms and legs. His face showed no anger, no fear, just calm. Eyes gray like frozen oceans stared straight ahead. He didn't blink when the charges were read aloud. He didn't flinch when the Zarathian guards struck him across the jaw to test his limits. He didn't even grunt. Some thought he was mute, others thought he was brain damaged. The oldest among them, the ones who had fought wars long ago, looked at him and saw something else, something ancient, but no one listened to old warriors anymore. The trial was short and loud. Ryder said nothing in his defense. He just stood there, silent and still, while the court passed its judgment. The verdict: lifetime confinement in Sector 7. Sector 7 was not a cell. It was a massive dome built deep within the prison, a self-contained jungle filled with danger. Not mechanical traps or robotic guards. No. Sector 7 housed creatures too dangerous for any other part of the galaxy. The crown jewel of these creatures were the dragons, real ones. Winged, scaly, fire-breathing monsters from dozens of ancient planets. Some came from the fire worlds of Glaven. Others were pulled from the gas, clouds of Cyros. All of them were deadly. All of them were killers. The dragons were intelligent, proud, and angry after years of captivity. No one had survived more than 20 minutes in Sector 7. When Ryder was dragged to the gate of the dome, the guards laughed. "Let the beasts have their meal," one said. Another joked about placing bets on how long the human would last. 5 minutes? 10? The gate opened with a hiss, revealing thick jungle trees, rising steam, and the glow of distant orange eyes. Ryder was shoved inside. The gate slammed shut behind him. The jungle swallowed him whole. Cameras buzzed to life. Across the prison, guards and commanders gathered in front of large screens to watch the show. It had become a game, watching Sector 7 eat the unwanted. The dragons always made it quick. Sometimes there was fire, sometimes just a shadow and a scream. Always there was blood, but this time, something strange happened. The jungle remained quiet. Minutes passed. No sound, no fire, no blood. A scout drone was sent in to locate the human, expecting to find bones or ash. It flew over thick branches and boiling rivers, scanning the green canopy with heat sensors. What it found made the guards freeze. There, in a clearing, stood Ryder Voss. His shirt was torn, his fists were red. But he stood tall, breathing calmly. Surrounding him were dragons, not attacking, not roaring, but watching. Watching like students watch a teacher. Like soldiers waiting for a command. The drone tried to get closer. Before it could transmit another frame, it was destroyed, ripped from the air by a blur of claws. The screens across Vault X9 turned black. At first, The guards thought it was a glitch. Then came the sound, deep, loud, and ancient. A roar, but not from a dragon. Something more powerful, something terrifying. The kind of sound that made even the oldest Zarathian officers stop moving. And still, Ryder did not speak. Hours passed with no contact. The command tower tried to send in troops, but none volunteered. Fear spread like poison. Sector 7 had gone dark, and the human, just one human, was still alive inside, untouched by fire or fang. The Zarathians had locked him in with dragons, but they had no idea what they had really done, because Ryder Voss was no ordinary man, and he wasn't trapped with monsters. The monsters were trapped with him. Inside Vault X9, the silence around Sector 7 grew heavier with each passing hour. What was supposed to be a quick execution by nature had instead become a source of fear. The security systems, once proud and perfect, had gone dark. The jungle's cameras were no longer transmitting. The drones sent in never returned. The dragons, once feared by the galaxy, had seemingly fallen silent. The guards, many of whom had watched the human enter with laughter on their lips, now whispered nervously. Something had gone wrong. Terribly wrong. At the center of it all was Ryder Voss, the prisoner who had spoken not a single word and yet turned a den of monsters into his arena. Desperate for answers, the prison warden finally approved the launch of a high-risk surveillance drone, equipped with stronger armor and faster engines. It zipped through the dense dome, over thick vines and smoking ground, past scorched trees, and clawed up stone. The sensors twitched as they picked up heat signatures, many of them. The dragons were there, still, watching, waiting. In the middle of a wide clearing lay the massive body of Varrock the Red, the largest dragon of Sector 7, known across multiple systems for its brutality and strength. Varrock was a creature of terror, a being that had once destroyed an entire rebel fleet during an escape attempt. His wings stretched wider than a gunship, his breath melted rock, and his hide resisted missiles. And yet, the drone's camera showed Varrock now lying still, one of its wings torn and folded beneath its own weight. Blood, thick and black, leaked from a deep gash across its chest. But what stunned the watchers more was what stood above the dragon, Ryder Voss, shirtless, bruised, breathing heavily, and completely calm. In one hand, he held what looked like a broken fang the size of a sword. Around him, the other dragons had formed a circle. Some had lowered their heads. Others kneeled completely, their claws folded under them, their wings tucked in, their eyes downcast. No snarling, no fire, no rage. They were not preparing to kill, they were bowing. Inside the control room, silence replaced all chatter. This was no longer an execution. This had become something else entirely, something ancient, something terrifying. Ryder had not only survived the dragons, he had defeated their leader and earned their loyalty. Rumors moved fast across the guards. Some whispered he used ancient tech. Others claimed he was a hybrid, half-dragon himself. But those who had seen his eyes before knew the truth. He had done it with nothing but willpower and raw fury. No tricks, no tools. Only the strength of a soul that had walked through hell long before Vault X9. Varrock's defeat wasn't just a fight won. It was a declaration. By choosing not to kill the dragon, Ryder had shown something greater than dominance. He had shown restraint, something even the dragons respected more than brute force. He had whispered something into Varrock's ear before the beast dropped its head. No one knew what was said, but the result was clear. He was no longer prey. He was their equal, their leader, their alpha. Panic took hold of the prison command. The dragons were now protecting the prisoner. When a gas release was triggered to knock them all out, the beasts huddled together, creating a living shield around Ryder. Not one dragon fell. The gas had no effect. Some speculated the dragons had adapted to chemical weapons over time. Others believed Ryder had warned them. Either way, the plan failed. Sector 7 became a fortress, and its king was not Zarathian. The walls began to shake as the dragons tested their strength. Years of captivity had made them restless. Now they had a reason to rise. Ryder began to walk. The dragons followed. The jungle trembled under their footsteps. Fire curled from their mouths. Vault X9 had become their cage for too long. And now, with one human as their spark, they were ready to burn it down. The guards locked the inner gates. The towers charged their plasma weapons. Droids were deployed in waves. It didn't matter. The dragons tore through steel like it was paper. Automated turrets melted under white-hot breath. And in the heart of the chaos, Ryder walked with slow, steady steps. He didn't scream orders. He didn't raise his fists. He simply moved forward, eyes fixed on the central tower. He had one goal, and the dragons, without question, made a path for him. The prisoners in other sectors stared in awe as the unthinkable unfolded. It wasn't a riot. It wasn't an escape. It was a storm, and its center was the quiet human with fire in his blood. Those who once laughed at his weakness now trembled in fear. The Zarathian Empire had sent him to die. Instead, he had awakened legends. Ryder Voss had done what no creature in the galaxy had dared. He walked into the lair of monsters and became their king. The command tower of Vault X9 stood tall like a jagged fang, piercing the toxic sky of Zirath's outer moon. Made of neutron-hardened alloy and built to withstand orbital strikes, it had never once been breached, not by escape, rebellion, or invasion. But now, the ground trembled beneath its foundations as the dragons of Sector 7 surged through the corridors, reducing blast doors to molten wreckage and melting plasma shields with gouts of living flame. At their center strode Ryder Voss, his face expressionless, his movements deliberate, as if he had walked this path 1,000 times in dreams twisted by war. The dragons around him no longer moved as beasts. They marched like warriors, eyes gleaming with primal focus. Alarms blared across the facility. Guards shouted, weapons roared, but it made no difference. One by one, the defenses crumbled, not because of failure in design, but because they had never been designed to stop something like this, something ancient, something unstoppable. Ryder reached the lift shaft, untouched by fire or fear, and, with a quiet motion, leapt onto the outer wall, climbing hand over hand through smoke and steel. The main elevator had been fused by heat, but his muscles, hardened through years of pain and training, carried him upward like a specter. As he ascended, the tower AI broadcast warnings in 17 languages, but the message was the same: containment breach, Sector 7 has fallen. Inside the control room, Warden Brask, a hardened Zarathian who once laughed while watching prisoners fed to beasts, now stared wide-eyed at the monitor feeds, his 3 hearts pounding in terror. The human should have died. He should have screamed. He should have been torn apart within minutes. But instead, the human had become the eye of a storm, the center of a rebellion written not in shouts, but in silence, fire, and fury. Brask ordered orbital cannons to target the dome, but the dragons had already taken position around the targeting arrays. One fired a stream of plasma so hot it cut the barrel of the cannon in half. The others destroyed power cores with surgical precision, as if guided by an unseen hand. Ryder's hand. The guards began to flee. Some locked themselves in the sublevels. Others begged for extraction. No one answered. The ships above had gone dark. Something had disrupted their systems. Some blamed the dragons. Others whispered about the human. Ryder breached the upper command floor, stepping through smoke and shattered glass. Brask raised a particle weapon, hands trembling, aiming at the man now walking across his command bridge. But before the trigger could be pulled, a deep growl echoed through the walls. A shape larger than any Zarathian had ever seen climbed through. The outer wall, Varrock, wings wide, scales glowing from within like lava under skin. He landed behind Ryder, eyes locked on the warden. Brask dropped the weapon. The standoff was already over. Ryder didn't speak. He never needed to. His presence alone was enough. He approached the terminal, eyes scanning the interface. With swift movements, he accessed the interplanetary broadcast channel. Static cleared, and across dozens of systems, millions of screens flickered to life. People, prisoners, citizens, rulers, and rebels watched as a human stepped into the cameras. View standing beside dragons once thought untamable. And then, for the first time since his arrival, Ryder spoke. "This is not a prison anymore," he said, voice cold, steady. "This is a throne." Behind him, the dragons roared in unison, a sound that shook moons and shattered silence across the stars. Panic spread through the Empire. Vault X9 was no longer under Zarathian control. It had become something else, a fortress ruled by dragons and led by a human nightmare. Within hours, rebel fleets rerouted toward the moon. Pirate kings sent, envoys begging for alliances. Slaves rose on nearby planets, chanting the human's name. Ryder didn't ask for loyalty. He inspired it through presence, through legend. He gave the dragons freedom, and in return, they gave him something no other creature ever had: unquestioning devotion. Not because he was stronger, but because he understood them. He hadn't tamed them. He had fought them, earned their respect, and treated them as equals. Vault X9 became the new capital of a rising force, not of rebellion or vengeance, but of raw, unyielding power. The dragons built new halls from stone and fire. Ryder walked among them like a quiet god, never sitting on a throne, never giving speeches, but always watching, always planning. The Empire tried to retaliate. They sent warships, assassins, drones. Nothing returned. One by one, systems near the prison moon fell silent, not out of destruction, but surrender. People began carving Ryder's image into walls, not out of fear, but awe. He had become a myth, a warning, a hope. Some called him the Fireborn King. Others, the Dragon Whisperer. But among the stars, one title spread faster than any other: the nightmare they locked away. And the galaxy finally understood the truth. When the Zarathians threw one human into a pit of dragons, they had not created a grave. They had forged a legend. A legend that would haunt empires, ignite revolutions, and remind all who ruled with cruelty that sometimes the most dangerous creature in the universe walks on two legs and wears a quiet face,